Barb, as I was saying, is our longest standing board member. She worked in the real estate industry for many years and retrained as a death doula as well, and brings a wide expanse of long experience of campaigning for medical assistance in dying to our board. Vuya Ilengu, Vuya, can you wave, unmute yourself, say hi? Vuya Ilengu joined us.
Hi, guys.
There you are.
Happy to
Hello.
be here. Hi.
Lovely to be you too. Vuya's career spent much of her career in the corporate world, holding very senior roles in marketing and branding with many household names. And then I think, as I've heard you say it, Vuya, you too, maybe similarly to Lynn, wanted to do work that really also fed your soul, and you too have trained as a death doula and skilled up in counseling a lot. And joined us just last year, so we'll hear the story of what brought you to DignitySA. But welcome, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And Sonia Bornman, Sonia, if you can wave, say hi, so people can see who you are.
Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see you all.
Hi.
Sonia is a wonderful person to have on our board, especially as we have now launched our court case at the beginning of this year. As you know, she is an attorney with extensive experience working on public interest cases and advocacy, and has just added so much value in so many ways. Also, like Vuya, joined recently, and between the three of them have such a wealth of experience that they bring to DignitySA. So you'll get to know a little bit more about them. You may have read their stories, you may have not. But Vuya, I want to come back to you, or kick off with you. Given your background in marketing and communications, we'll talk about stories tonight. Can you tell us what actually is a story? Like what, I mean, we might think we know a story, but like how would you define, what makes a story a story?
So yes, a story is more than simply telling people what happened. At its heart, a story is really about making sense of an experience, the emotion that comes with that experience, and the meaning we usually find in that experience. You're basically taking a moment of your life and you're opening a window or a door, and you're allowing someone to just peek in and see what's happening in your life through your eyes. And all you're asking is for someone to understand what exactly is happening at that moment in your life. So when we tell our stories, we're basically saying to someone what happened, how it made me feel, and why it mattered so much, or why it still matters, and what did I learn from that. And the story doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be dramatic. It's usually those small moments in our lives that we think are just ordinary that become extraordinary stories, depending on how you tell it. And because it always connects us to deeply human experiences, and you actually see yourself in someone's story, and you learn to understand yourself through someone's story.
Thank you, Vuya. And I mean, again, these might sound like basic questions, but I think they're worth asking. Why is it stories are so powerful? Why do they work so well to draw us in, to shine a light on something?
Because I think really we recognize ourselves in people's stories. And usually when you hear a genuine, authentic story, certain things happen. For starters, it connects us. You get connected to that story. And stories basically change a fact. So whatever is a fact, it changes it into a story. For instance, if I said to you guys right now, there's been 31% rise in poverty in Alex, that's a fact. But if I say to you that a mother or a single mother of 2 children walks to and from Alex to Sentin every day for 2 kilometers, and she does this not because she enjoys walking, but she does it because it's the only way to feed her kids. Now, the latter becomes much more emotionally appealing than the fact that I just said to you, there's 31% rise in poverty in Alex. So that's what a story does. It connects you to something. It also makes big human issues become tangible. For instance, before Lynn's story, you just knew about the fact that DignitySA is fighting for medical assisted dying, but it was just an abstract thought. But now you understand after reading Lynn's story that there is someone out there, there's Dieter who's sitting and thinking about his end of life. And that becomes a much more human feeling because now you understand that someone is living this. It's not just an abstract thing. Yeah. And then another thing is that stories stay with us. We read a story, and for years, that story will stay with you. And if you guys have read Lynn's story, Lee's story, where she talks about her best friend dying, and there's a moment where she talks about the fact that her mother drove her to her friend's house. And as they drove in, there was just in this darkness, there was this lone candle that was by the window. I mean, I read that line, I still get goosebumps when I think about it, because it gives you an idea that even in this darkness, in this catastrophic thing that had happened in Lynn's best friend's home, there was still that one single light. And maybe that is the light that drove Lee, not Lynn, sorry, Lee, to be the person that she is today. And for me, I read that line and it's been with me since I read the story. And also stories, they ask us to arrive in our own space without being persuaded to think otherwise. You tell someone a story, you don't have to stand in front of them and say, this is what I believe. It's not a debate, it's just a story. So you just tell someone's story, and when they finish the story, they make their own decisions on what to think. Yeah.
Thank you, Boya. Thank you. And now to sort of bring that to life, let's go to a story because, I was bowled over, as I think you were, Lynn, when we shared your story, got over 160,000 views and comments and a complete outpouring. So we're going to talk about what that was like for you. But first, for people who haven't read your story, Lynn, can you sort of recap a little bit of what you shared in your story? What is the story that brought you to Dignity South Africa?
Yeah, very briefly. Hi, good evening, everybody. The story for me basically is that I lost a husband when I was really young, and I had two small children, and he took quite some time to pass away. He was really ill and in an ICU unit in Joburg, Jen, for 2 years when I had very small kids. So he had quite a long, and we knew he was going to die. There was no treatment. There was they could do. Work. Eventually turned to bone, and that was horrendous. And my dad died of Parkinson's, which was also horrendous, and long, terrible deaths. And my mum's death was probably the one for me that was the worst, because she was mentally able to tell us about that, whereas my dad was more out of it, but he was also really, really ill and really just a nothing lying there. And as I say, you're sitting around on like in a waiting room, waiting, watching somebody just slowly but surely disappear into nothing, and you can't do anything about it, and you know that they're desperately unhappy. My mother, on the other hand, had horrendous pain. She had fantastic palliative care. For I'd say about 9 or 10 months, she was really well managed until she wasn't. And that was horrendous. She eventually ended up going on to a syringe driver. That's a permanent needle thing in your arm, and it's full of morphine and fentanyl and whatever they want, and it drips in 24 hours all the time. They basically sedated her. But in that sedation, I eventually moved in with her. She was in a retirement village in a frail care center, and I moved in with her and slept on the floor on a mattress in her room for 2 weeks it took for her to die on that syringe driver. And every time they came in, every 3 hours, to move her, to change her so that she wouldn't get bed sores, she would just scream out in this agonizing pain, which was terrible. And then I would go and try and push this button, push, to try and get more drugs into her, more. But it just didn't work, because apparently her liver was already affected, and with your liver not working, nor do the drugs. So that was horrendous. Eventually she passed away, and we were just so relieved and so grateful that she was gone and it was over for her. And then, but before that, I'd already met Dieter, who's my life partner, and he was fit, well, a very energetic, lovely man. We worked together, and then we started a relationship, and we still do have a really lovely relationship together, but he ended up getting motor neuron disease, which was similar to what Joost van der Westhuizen had. And then it was re-diagnosed about 5 years after the original diagnosis to say that it was actually PLS, not ALS. And PLS is just a slow progression motor neuron, so it can take anything from 1 to 20 years to pass away, whereas ALS is anything from 1 to 5. So when he lived longer than the 5 years, they renegotiated and said, okay, no, it's PLS. And from the day that Dieter was diagnosed, where he was officially diagnosed in 2013 of ALS, the first question out of his mouth was, how do I get out of this when I want to? Can you help me, dear doctor? And every single doctor, and we saw many doctors, said no. So I think that's really where I realized that I need to do something here. And Dieter also was absolutely adamant that that's what he wanted to do. And so that's really sparked my interest in it. And then I was very familiar with Sean Davidson. I was very familiar with Lee Last, who used to work with Sean. She's subsequently passed away. And in fact, when she passed away, I took over her position and worked together with Sean Davison and Willem Landman for about 3 years on our own, until wonderful Lee came along, and Sanya and Boya and everybody, and we just got the most amazing, wonderful team. And here I am fighting for Dieter, my love of my life, to have a good passing.
Sure, Lynn, you shared new details with us tonight that we didn't know, and I guess that's the power of storytelling. But that's quite a story, and an amazing labor of love 4 times over now. Sure. I gather, Lynn, that when you wrote the story down for us in preparation for Women's Month, you never quite shared what you sort of shared the story in that way, sort of writing it in that chronological order. I mean, people knew your story, but you never sort of shared it, and also maybe shared it that publicly before. And then you just got this incredibly overwhelming response. What was that like? What to get that response?
Well, I actually think I was completely surprised, actually, to be really honest, because I didn't think my story was that different to a lot of people. I mean, lots of people have lost parents, and lots of people have lost people, loved ones. So, I mean, I'm not alone with that. There's nothing fancy about me in any way. I just, I think what I really felt about that is that I was really excited that we've got buy-in. It's not just Dieter and I and you guys on the team. It's not just us. There is a need, and there's lots of people that are wanting this. And for all those years that I have been with Dignity and answering the calls and doing that before Lee joined, there was just never-ending calls of people asking how we can help them pass away, and we can't do anything. And that also is just like draining. You think this is a real need for not everybody, for a very few amount of people actually that are going to need this. And Dieter needs this because he's not going to be able to kill himself. He's not going to be able to do that. And if he needs to kill himself, he actually has to do that sooner rather than later, while he can still swallow, while he can still move. So, and that's his option right now. That is his only option right now. He's going to have to do it himself, which he will do probably, if this doesn't get passed in time, which I doubt whether it will. So for me, it was just really important to and very exciting to see that there's so many people that are needing this. And I think it's changed. I think in the last couple of years, it's changed. You know, I think people have got the balls to come out and say, this is what we want and this is what we need. And I think it's really important that we all fight for this.
And thank you, Lynn. And you saw in the comments that it elicited other people sharing their stories.
Yeah.
You know, people said, yes, this happened to me. And I'm glad that after all these years of fighting for so long, I mean, it's been, by my count now, 13 years since Dieter was diagnosed, and thankfully he's still alive.
Well, yeah, but he was sick before even that diagnosis. You know, it takes such a long time to get to the bottom of motor neuron because there is no test. It's just a process of elimination. They just tick off, it's not this, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that, so it must be this.
That's a very long and lonely road, Lynn. And what I hear you saying, amongst other things, is that part of what's happening and what you're feeling now is more people coming around you and more support. And growing.
That's very comforting. Yeah. So thanks, guys, for being here and hopefully on our page.
And we're going to circle back to you again, Lynn. But Sonia, can you say a little bit more? I remember, you know, Lynn asking us when she got that overwhelming response, like, but why? You know, what is it about my story? My story, as you heard her say, is not particularly original, like, but why? Given your experience in advocacy and communications, why do you think Lynn's story resonated so much?
Gosh, Lee, knowing what I know about advocacy and the incredible power that it has when you are trying to persuade people of something, when you are trying to explain something to people and get them to feel it and really grasp what it's like. I think it's precisely the fact that Lynn's story is not that unique that made it be so unbelievably impactful, because so many people could read the story and think, that's me, that's my life, or that's someone that I know. And despite the fact that it is, as Lynn says, very much a shared experience, it was so authentically told. You can't help but, as Vuya says, get shivers down your spine when you read it. And it really is a testament to the power of sharing your personal experience and allowing that to resonate with other people and allowing that to touch other people. So that's something that actually is quite abstract, can become very practical, very immediate, and very real.
And what I hear both you and Vuya saying is it doesn't have to be polished. You don't have to be an amazing writer. You know, it doesn't be tied up with a bow. It's the authenticity of the sharing. It's a sense that this is a real person here, and that elicits a whole range of emotions.
Absolutely.
Sonia, can you say a little bit more about how you've seen stories used, particularly for advocacy, and maybe some examples, perhaps?
So in my sort of work, which is mostly human rights related, specifically women's rights related, you're very often dealing with very difficult emotive issues, things like gender-based violence, things like poverty, things like abuse. And I think people often believe that you need to talk about the numbers. You need to show how big the problem is. You need to drill down and disaggregate the data and get people to see exactly how many people are affected and so on. But honestly, in my experience, it's the personal stories that make the biggest impact and that build the most empathy. If I think about the kinds of audiences that we work with in my line of work, parliamentarians especially, are a great example of people who they don't really have time to read your long policy brief, and they're not really animated by a bunch of statistics. I think honestly, the sharpest tool that you have in your belt when it comes to advocacy is storytelling. It was just this week that I spent some time with a group of organizations that provide social care services in Gauteng, and they're having an incredibly difficult time getting state funding, getting it at all, or getting it on time and consistently. And a lot of them are sort of under threat and may have to close their doors. And I said to them, you can talk to people, talk to the press about having to close your doors and how terrible that is for your staff, and people are going to lose their jobs. But the real and best thing that you can do, the most real and the best thing that you can do, is talk about the people who are going to lose your services, because those are the people that you really care about. Those stories need to come out so that people can understand what is happening to them, and that it's not just a question of, oh, well, another organization has come to an end, or has failed or has flopped. It's about a lot more than that, because one organization might represent thousands of beneficiaries that will have to go without services. And it's those beneficiaries whose stories are going to get people to understand what is really happening there.
Thank you, Sanya. At DignitySA, we spend a lot of time asking people to share their stories and sharing their stories. And what I love is that this month, all three of you as directors and leaders of Dignity has actually role modeled that. You've made yourselves vulnerable by sharing, because there's a story that brings everyone who's listening here today has come here because of a story. So we all have our stories, and it's been so insightful to learn more about the three of you, particularly this month. So your story was shared just after Lynn's, which is a pretty, although she thinks, what I mean, it's a pretty grand story. It's a pretty epic story. So how then did you approach the sharing of your story as you thought about writing that and sharing that? What came up for you?
I'm the new kid on the block, obviously, here at Dignity South Africa. I only came to this work comparatively recently, and that is because my sort of direct experience with death was comparatively recently, with the passing of my grandmother and the experience around that, how it happened, what I saw, what I heard, what I experienced in that period. And honestly, for a long time, I wondered, okay, so what do I write? What do I focus on? And then I realized that all I needed to do was make a start, and it kind of just, came out of me, I guess. And because it is such a story of serendipity, really, and a story that really made me feel that the stars were aligning, and that it meant that I needed to be doing this work. It felt to me like the universe was saying, this is correct. You are on the right path, and you need to do this. And so it was important for me to include that, and point out that I do regard the work that we do as, and Professor Raimondo also says this, as a sacred mission. And it's funny to use the word sacred, which is often associated with religion. And my gran was a very religious person, but as I said in my story, I'm not. And so this feels like a very profound kind of a journey that I'm on for her, but also more so for the people who are still alive, and who I love, and for whom I just want better.
So for those who haven't read Sanya's story about her grandmother, and I will share the links to all of them again, it's a really rollicking read. I was pulled in from the very beginning, and this is, I guess, again, the power of authenticity and storytelling is it was so different to Lynn's, also in tone and in approach. But it felt like I was like, I got to the end, I was like, whoa, that was I'm really, from the get-go, from the moment you started, I was in and I was with you. And so I loved how just authentically you shared, because it was as powerful as Lynn's in a different way. And so I love also what you're saying to us tonight about just start. If you're feeling nervous or unsure, just start typing or put that pen to paper. Just it then flows. And also this theme of meaning making. As you say, you're not a religious person, but this feels meaningful to you. And writing the story again affirmed that, wow, there were a couple of forces at play and connects you to that sacred mission. So
that's
thank
certainly
you.
what it felt like to me. There were forces at play. Something was happening. And here I am.
And I bet you're not alone in that either. So we're going to hear from other people later too, and I bet there are a couple of people who feel, gosh, I found DignitySA just at the right time, or things like that. I think that's part of arriving here. Maybe we'll hear a little more later. So before we open up and bring in some other stories, thank you for that, Sonia. Where you haven't yet shared your story publicly, that one is coming out on Saturday. And I gather that the process of preparing and thinking about how to approach your story hasn't been easy. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I usually write stories, but this one was quite hard, and because it's about my parents who passed away during COVID, and they passed away 20 days apart. And I wanted to be as honest as I could, but I also didn't want to be emotionally spilling, as you said, like vomit on the page, because my story is not about grief. I don't want people walking away feeling, oh, poor her. I don't want people to pity me or have sympathy for me, because that's not what the story is. It's all just about engaging with people to say, understand where I'm coming from. And as I said, at the heart of my story, this is what happened, and it broke something in me, and I still carry that with me. And this is how my life has changed since that has happened to me. So that is basically what my story is. And I think most of our stories, actually, having read all our stories, that's basically what we're asking the readers to do, just to read our stories and then understand what happened to us and understand us even better. Because when you're asked to tell your personal story, you're being asked to be courageous. It's an act of being courageous because it's your story, it's your personal story. Like when I wrote it, I felt so exposed because there's a lot that I'm sharing, very personal details of what happened in my life. So I also felt like, oh, maybe I'm sharing too much. What if someone just reads it and like, oh yeah, whatever. Because that is my story. That is important to me. So that's why I feel like when you write a story, when you share your story, whoever you are being very courageous at that moment, because someone can just dismiss your story as a trite platitudes, or whatever. But to you, it's a very important thing that you're sharing. It's who you are. So yeah.
I think it's Brené Brown, I might be wrong, has this term of a vulnerability hangover. It's that like, you've shared so much, and then it's like, oh, how is this going to be received, right? Have you ever had that before?
Absolutely. I mean, even after I sent it through to you guys to read, I was still thinking, that's a bit too much. Oh, and now I feel so exposed. Like the three of you are going to look at me and judge me, But also, as she says, as Katie Brown says, who would you be without your story? Because this is who you are. So yeah, you just have to share it and hope that people are going to receive it in a positive light, or it will make a difference in someone's life.
And also in the process of sharing it, we do it for others and to connect and to advocate and to, shine a light. But there's gift for us. And so I want to, well, often, I mean, I believe so. And you said something a little while ago that really resonated with me and I didn't fully appreciate, and I was happy to hear, is that even in the short time that you've been a part of DignitySA, it's been healing for you. Can you say a little bit more about
You
what you meant when you said that? I'm just going to try and mute Mirena. Okay.
Okay, so as I said, like the passing of my parents changed the way that I view my life. It changed the way that I think about death and also just dying in general. And I think at that moment when they passed away, I needed something that was going to help me grieve. I was navigating grief. So I trained as a death doula like Lynn and yourself because I just needed to understand what death is all about. And when I also then started working with DignitySA, that expanded my view of what this whole world of death and being there for people is all about. And that's why I was saying to you, it has been cathartic in a way, deeply cathartic for me because it has helped me to not only hold on to my experience, but also be able to look at other people and say, there's more out there. People are going through so much. And through that, it just makes me realize that we just need to be connected to people, and it is what we're doing. It's not just about policies and debates or court cases. There are actual people who are going through life's most difficult moments. Lean and deter for me are that. And the minute you start thinking of that there are other people out there that are going through this time that is difficult for them, it stops being about just a court case. It becomes something that that someone is going to be helped if we change the constitution, if we do this well. And as Sanya and Joe have said, it's a sacred thing. And I know we're not, blowing air up our ass. It is, because even if you are not, even if you're not a Christian, there's a thing that you have to be able to look at someone suffering and be able to say, no, that's not right. It should not be allowed. So yeah, I think just by working with DignitySA, that has really made me feel much more empathy for people suffering.
I'm so glad because you've given so much to us. I'm glad that you're gaining and finding gift too. Is also the sense, I think, without being too grandiose about it, for me at least, and I hope for everyone here, because it really does take all of us, is that we're potentially part of something quite historic. We're part of history in the making, and all of us will be able to look back and go, wow, we did it, and witness the people who it touches, including hopefully Dieter in time. Sanya, what has your experience been? Has there been unexpected gift in being part of DignitySA?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's the people, right? The people that make up DignitySA. It's the people who have been doing this for way, way longer than what I have. It's the absolute dedication and tenacity to be able to go year after year after year, fighting for the same thing. And it's an incredible privilege to be coming to DignitySA in this time. We've just launched this case. The case has just now begun. But in fact, the journey started a very, very long time ago already. And so, yeah, it really is a privilege to be part of this this group of incredible people who are doing something that I think is very meaningful, very impactful, and as Vuya said, is going to affect a lot of people who really need this. And it's not just the people who need this right now, but everyone who might need it in the future. And it does feel great to be part of something that feels like history making. And so yes, changing the law is a big deal. And it can sometimes take a very long time to get to the big moment, the sharp point of the knife, so to speak. But I think we're almost there. And it's just been an incredible privilege to meet everyone. Lynn and Vuya and yourself, Joe and Willem and everyone who makes up DignitySA. It really is a pleasure to serve.
And that's part of what I wanted a sense of tonight, is for people to get a sense of people like yourself, Lynn, Vuya, like the good people who make up this organization, and feel a little bit more connected. Because I think there are people who've been, as you say, at the coalface for a long time, who've been vilified, but once we get to know each other as humans, it's very hard to other each other. And so I know that everyone's listening here is probably are sympathetic and warm to the cause. And I wanted to give them a sense of the people, and the goodness of the people. And as you say, that's been one of the great joys for me. It's just the privilege of doing good work with good people. I think that's like one of life's great blessings. And in fact, when I shared your story this weekend, I said exactly that. I said, it's such one of the things that gives me joy. And you're one of those people. So yeah, it's I'm glad you've enjoyed working with all of us. Lynn, we're going to circle all the way back to you, because the consequence of sharing your story, especially in a sustained way, and now more so over 13 years, is that you were sharing with us recently that, like, you go out in public and people are recognizing you. People know you in a new way now.
It is definitely starting to become that, which I'm not terribly crazy about, but yeah, it is what it is. But you know what? While we're on this, I sit here saying, looking strong and feeling strong about all of this, but I actually don't know how this is going to really be when Dieter says to me, I've had enough. That's something that I don't know how I'm going to handle that, and I don't know how the family is going to handle that. So it's all very well saying, that we're brave and we're strong here, and, this is what we want. I think it's a completely different story. But Lee, you should know about that, because you've also been through quite a lot of that with your own sister.
Yeah, my story it was talk about meaning making. I think I had my first coffee with someone from DignitySA about 2 years ago, and that was it. It was just I was approached, for just someone. Joe wanted to make some sense of some things, and he just wanted to bounce some ideas. It was not, and it was just one coffee, but meaningfully, the very next month, my stepsister shared that after 16 years of battling cerebellar ataxia, where her cerebellum has literally been slowly shrinking and there is no cure to be had, she was at the place where, after contemplating for many years and not telling any of us, she had enrolled as a member of DignitySA, of Dignitas in Switzerland, and had a date. And she literally gave us a year, which I thought was just quite remarkable. So many people, we hear stories all the time of people, and like my story began, different circumstances. But if, my first initiation into death, as it were, was a young friend of mine when we were 15 who died by suicide, and so many people get to that place of desperation, and their only option, they feel, is to die by suicide. And yet my sister did something so different. She planned it, she thought about it, and that comes with luxury and privilege, which is another reason we're campaigning for it to be accessible here in South Africa. But effectively, she gave us a year, and as a family, we had a whole year, and I could dip into my savings and take my daughters over to the UK where she lived and go and say goodbye to her. And one of the things I thanked her for, and we're coming up now, she died in September last year, so we're coming up to the anniversary, and we're feeling it very keenly at the moment. You know what that's like. All of you've lost people. That first year is quite a significant one. But one of the things I said to her when I had the privilege of being with her and spending time with her is I thanked her for the gift of time. She was like, what? No one's ever thanked me for that before. I was like, yeah, it's such a thing to know, and we can support you or not support you, but you've given us all time to wrap our heads and our hearts around it, and so that was quite amazing, that came into my life so in such a personal way, and just watching her walk that road was just quite something. And also, I must say, the aftermath of that walking the road now very closely. So last thing I'll say, and I'm speaking a lot, but she was young. She had just turned 40. She died shortly after her 40th birthday, and she had been in relationship with her husband for 20 years. They'd been married for 10. And it was such an incredible partnership. And he, of course, didn't want her to do this, but he was like, what would love do? She wants this, I must support her. So he went with her to Dignitas, and he was there when she died. But his grief, of walking the other side of the coin, could he have done any more? Should he maybe have, all of that. It's been quite a thing, the whole road, walking that journey with them. But to this day, maybe the last thing I'll say is he's enduringly proud of her, and will always publicly speak about how she died and the choices she made. It's not something that he is ashamed of speaking about, or he wants there to be a stigma about. She was very clear in her choices. And yeah, so it's been quite something to I didn't expect to live up so close to it. But yeah, that's part of my story. And yeah, what is yeah. So now trying to make that possible in a way, and honor her legacy, as we all are honoring our loved ones in the work that we do. She's definitely one of the people I try to honor in my work. So that was a lot about me. Now I'm feeling a vulnerability hangover. Does anyone have any particular questions? Now you've got four of the directors, or three of the directors of DignitySA, and Dieter, who's practically a director himself. He's so knowledgeable and such an amazing advocate. Does anyone have questions for any of us? And you can just, we're such a small group, you can just unmute and speak up. Don't have to be tremendously formal about this.
I'm not sure if I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't see
We
anybody.
can't see you, Mandy, but we can hear you.
I can't see you either.
No.
Could you hurry?
Could we hurry?
Yes, please. I'd like to be there when it gets pushed through.
Sonia, do you want to say a little bit about the process and why it's probably taking so long? And yeah, just how does this? What is
I'm not
it?
complaining. I'm not complaining. I'm
And
just
now we
saying.
can see you too.
Sure. So, I mean, going to court, people, I think often they watch TV and then they have this idea of what it's like to go to court, and how long it takes and all of that. And it's actually quite a slow process in reality, especially when you're suing the state. It takes them a long time to get their ducks in a row. And I think this is also a pretty important case. And so, to be honest, I'm quite pleased that the respondents are taking time to think about it properly before they file their papers. But it may still be a while before we actually have our day in court. Pretty likely will be sometime next year, I think. And our attorneys are, I think, really on it in terms of making sure that the wheels turn. Even if they turn slowly, the wheels are turning. And so when you say hurry up, we're going to do our very best to make sure this thing moves. I think from what I've heard tonight, there are lots of people who are anxious for it to become a reality.
I don't want to sound ungrateful. I mean,
No,
I don't want to be. It's not facetious. I just mean it'll be nice. It'll be wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
And just, I mean, to underscore what's, I guess, obvious, especially after tonight, is just, the more we can make it real. This matters to, and here's a name, here's a face, here's a story. This is why time is of the essence for this person. The more it helps us. So if you have a story, or someone who has a story, that's probably one of the most powerful things you could gift us with, and gift this campaign with, is a story that makes it real in yet another way. Any other questions, comments?
Don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you guys are doing. It's incredible. It's really fantastic work. So we're behind you, and we will try and send out these stories to everyone. I have already done so, and that's such brilliant responses. So more people will come onto your site. So thank you very much. You guys are doing amazing work, and we really appreciate what you do. Thank you.
That's so special to hear. Thank you. We love
Thanks,
knowing
Ernell.
that. And I see lots of love coming through. So just
Yeah.
maybe in closing, you might want to say something, but I just want to quickly just share for those of you, I see many people that we know well who are long-standing members and supporters. But if you are saying, you know, what can I do? How can I help the case? Here are some ways. If you aren't already a member, please join us. It's free. If you want to donate towards our legal costs, which is still a long road, as you heard, you can do that on our website as well. On our homepage, there's also a petition. We're very close. I haven't actually checked today, but we might be at 4,000 signatures. The goal is to get to 5,000 in the next month, by the end of September. And I think with the community growing, we will get there. So the momentum on the petition continues. Stories, you can voice note them even. You don't have to write them. You can voice note them to our number or write them in our contact page. Or you can join us as an ambassador. I see some of our ambassadors are here in the audience today. Ambassador is someone who is willing to be a volunteer by speaking up, finding ways to present, and there is training and support provided. That's a new program that we just launched. So if you want to become even more involved, the ambassador program might be for you too. But all of this is on our website, and you're welcome to also just reach out to any one of us. I think we're moving to closing, unless anyone has anything else that they would like to ask or say. We're such a small group now. If not, Dita, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know that speaking isn't easy for you, but I know that doesn't deter you. And given that it's Women's Month, I wanted to ask if there is anything you particularly want to say in this public forum to the very special woman in your life. You'll have to, there we are. Hi.
So beautiful and very much loved.
He said we are all beautiful and we all very much loved.
Oh. It's so mutual.
He's having a bad day with his voice today. So I don't think talking is a good thing today, Lee, I'm afraid.
Sorry for putting you on the spot like that, Dita.
No worries.
Thank you for sharing the love. On that note,
thanks, guys. Thanks for your support.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, folks. Go well.
See you around. Bye.
Thanks for all the comments and feedback, everyone.
Bye.